The nights of Northern California in the late 1960s carried a quiet, deceptive calm. Suburban streets, lined with modest homes and small, tidy lawns, seemed safe. Children played until dusk. Couples walked hand in hand along darkened sidewalks. And families settled down for evening meals, unaware that a darkness far more sinister lurked among them. It began subtly at first. On a foggy summer night in December 1968, a young couple parked their car along a remote road near Vallejo. Their names were Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, innocent teenagers, brimming with life, unaware that their evening would end in terror. They were approached by a stranger, faceless in the dim glow of the car's interior. The following moments were gruesome, sudden, and unexplainable shots fired, screams silenced, and by the next morning, the community was shaken to its core. The media latched onto the case, reporting it with a sense of disbelief. Residents whispered about a killer among us, someone who struck without warning, without pattern. But what truly amplified the terror was not just the act itself, it was the letters that followed. In August 1969, the San Francisco Chronicle received a cryptic letter, typed neatly, almost calmly. It began casually, but the words it contained were anything but ordinary. The letter claimed responsibility for the earlier murders and included a cipher, a puzzle that, if solved, would reveal the author's identity. The writer called himself the Zodiac. Immediately, a cloud of fear and fascination descended over the region. The Zodiac wasn't content with hiding in the shadows. He wanted to play a game, taunting the public and the authorities alike. Each letter was a performance of control, crafted to terrify, to confuse, and to enthrall. The Zodiac's attacks continued sporadically, with no discernible pattern to his victims, no clear connection between them, aside from their vulnerability in isolated locations. Couples parked in lovers' lanes, lone cab drivers, and random pedestrians became his potential targets. His letters were equally terrifying as his actions, each one laced with arrogance, mockery, and the promise of future carnage. The first cipher, sent along with a letter to the Chronicle, challenged readers and cryptographers alike. "I like killing people because it is so much fun," it read in part. The words were casual, almost cheerful, describing murder as entertainment. Authorities were baffled. How could someone commit such acts with such calm, even glee? Public paranoia surged. Parents forbade children from going out at night. Neighborhood watches formed. Teens feared the dark roads where they had once met friends in secrecy. The Zodiac's grip on the imagination of Northern California was almost total. Every suspicious figure, every shadow, became a potential suspect in the eyes of a frightened populace. And then came the Z340 cipher, the most complex puzzle of them all. Unlike the earlier codes, this one contained 340 characters in an intricate arrangement, a riddle wrapped in a mystery. For decades, it defied solution, earning a place in true crime lore as one of the most elusive and taunting cryptograms in history. Police departments scrambled to respond. In Vallejo, San Francisco, and surrounding areas, detectives worked tirelessly, piecing together witness statements, forensic evidence, and letters from the killer himself. Yet the Zodiac remained invisible, always one step ahead. Arthur Lee Allen emerged as a suspect, largely because of circumstantial evidence, connections to certain crimes, possession of items vaguely linked to Zodiac's letters, and odd behavior. Yet despite intense scrutiny, nothing was conclusive. Allen died in 1992, leaving the case unresolved. But by then, the legend of the Zodiac had grown beyond any single man. In the following decades, many other suspects were proposed, each investigation opening new avenues and closing them almost immediately. Police and amateur detectives alike worked in vain. Each new tip, each new lead felt like a possibility. But the case remained cold, unsolved, leaving a lingering fear that the killer was still out there, waiting, watching, or perhaps long gone but never forgotten. Meanwhile, the letters continued to surface sporadically. In these correspondences, the Zodiac mocked investigators, threatened future attacks, and even included small puzzles meant to reveal something about his identity but never did. Every attempt to decode his messages failed. The public's fascination only intensified. a mix of horror and morbid curiosity that carried his infamy across the decades. It's easy to get lost in the numbers, the ciphers, the headlines, but each victim of the Zodiac was a real person with dreams and families. Darlene Ferrin, murdered in 1969 during an attack that would cement the Zodiac's notoriety, was a beloved figure in Vallejo, known for her kindness and smile. Michael Mageau, her companion that night, survived, but his life was forever scarred by the trauma. Other victims included taxicab driver Paul Stein, shot in the streets of San Francisco, and multiple young couples in rural areas. Survivors of attacks were left with permanent psychological scars, their memories a mix of horror and confusion. For the families, the letters, the ciphers, the games of the Zodiac weren't just news, they were personal, a constant reminder of a presence that felt both omnipotent and undetectable. Psychologists later described the Zodiac as a classic case of a narcissistic, sadistic individual who craved attention and control. The letters weren't just communications, they were performances of terror, carefully curated to extend his influence beyond the act of murder. The Z340 cipher became a symbol of the Zodiac's brilliance and cruelty. Experts around the world attempted to crack it. Universities, independent codebreakers, even hobbyists pored over the cryptogram for years. Techniques evolved from pen and paper analysis to early computers, then modern algorithms, but all failed to yield the killer's identity. It seemed invincible, almost taunting the world with its unsolved status. For 51 years, the puzzle remained a locked door, a reminder that some mysteries refused to die quietly. Then, in December 2020, a breakthrough occurred. 3 unlikely collaborators, David Orenchak from the United States, Sam Blake from Australia, and Jarl van Eyck from Belgium, announced that they had finally decoded the Z340 cipher. Their approach blended intuition, pattern recognition, and modern computational methods, but it required patience, precision, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. The revelation stunned the world. For half a century, the cipher had been a ghostly enigma, and suddenly, its contents were exposed. The decoded message revealed something chilling, not in detail, but in tone. "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber, because it will send me to paradise all the sooner." The words were a mirror into the Zodiac's mind, arrogant, remorseless, and eerily confident. The misspelling of paradise was a signature touch, childish in appearance, but calculated to unsettle. It didn't reveal his identity, his location, or his next move, but it provided insight. He viewed himself as untouchable, unafraid of death, and delighted in the terror he caused. The public reaction was immediate. Headlines shouted about the solved cipher, but beneath the excitement lurked a stark truth. The man behind the messages had never been caught. The thrill, the horror, and the mystery remained, only now with a voice that could speak, taunting from beyond the decades. Despite the cipher's solution, the identity of the Zodiac remains debated. Arthur Lee Allen, long suspected, left behind circumstantial evidence, but nothing definitive. Other suspects, like Gary Francis Post, have been proposed, but law enforcement has never confirmed their involvement conclusively. Over time, amateur investigators have used genealogy, forensic analysis, and behavioral profiling to propose theories. Some suggest the Zodiac was a man of ordinary appearance, blending into society, while others argue he was closer to the type portrayed in his letters: clever, manipulative, and obsessed with attention. The case endures because it touches a deep psychological chord, the fear that evil can walk unnoticed among ordinary people, that genius can be combined with cruelty, and that the world does not always reward justice with closure. The Zodiac Killer left an indelible mark on American history. He transformed the landscape of true crime, inspiring books, films, and endless speculation. The letters, ciphers, and murders became a cultural phenomenon, a case study in criminal psychology and cryptography. Communities learned caution, law enforcement learned patience, and generations of sleuths were inspired to think critically and creatively. Yet, the case also remains a warning. Some evil is elusive, and sometimes the greatest terror is not knowing who is behind the mask. The decoding of the Z340 cipher was monumental, but it was also bittersweet. It proved that with perseverance, intellect, and collaboration, mysteries could be unraveled. But it also reminded the world that the human mind could produce darkness so complex it could defy resolution for decades. Even today, the Zodiac Killer remains a symbol of fear, ingenuity, and obsession. The cipher has been solved, but the killer's identity has not. Families of victims continue to mourn. Survivors live with memories of a predator who saw life as a game. Society continues to study and speculate. The story is not just about murders, ciphers, or investigation. It's about human fascination with the unknown, about our desire to impose order on chaos, and about the ways in which terror and mystery intertwine. For the people of Northern California,